We've got a special event before the event this morning. We have Tyler and Tony.
Have you got his credit card?
And they've got a presentation. So,
hey, good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see such a big and lively crowd here this morning. My name is Tony Ricketts. This is Tyler Stinson, and we work at D. Patrick Motorplex on Green River Road. And D. Patrick has a program where we like to give back to the community. And one of our favorite charities, one of our favorite nonprofits is this museum, which we consider to be a tremendous asset to Evansville. We feel like it's very important to preserve our history, and also gives an opportunity to a lot of people that maybe aren't quite as old as us to remember some of the things that are in this room and what Evansville meant to the war effort during World War II and so on, and many other events, and a lot of people that fought and gave their lives from Evansville. So as a result of that, we did a program a year or two ago with the museum right after the wind kind of did some damage here. And with BMW, they had a program where they had some veterans that were actually walking across the United States and made stops in different locations, including Evansville. And the museum was a benefit of that. And we just feel like it's one of our favorite organizations. So we're going to present a check for $1,000 again today. All right?
Great thanks to D. Patrick for their generous donation. So at this time, with the great crowd we've got today, if you could all, who are able, please rise. Let's bow our heads in prayer. Lord, our most gracious and holy Father, we give you great thanks for this day. Thanks for all those who could attend. Thanks for the blessings of this country. Thank you for the food that's been prepared and delivered here. Thanks for the Bronstein Foundation for their generous donation. And this day, we remember in the past, 81 years ago, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The U.S. Navy was very victorious. Sailors placed their lives in harm's way. And today we pray especially for those who are placing their lives in harm's way, things that are happening for which we do not know the details, but we do know they are in play. And we ask for your grace and your saving arm to be around all those who are willing to lay their lives on the line for this country. We give you great thanks for all those who have served and all those who will serve. We ask that you guide this country and be upon the leaders of our country, that they may make decisions that are coming from the wisdom that you provide. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, please lead us in the national anthem. Please join me in singing our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see my wrongs early light?
so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, love bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Tom.
Good morning. How are you today? Thank you for coming today. My name is Mark Browning. I'm sitting over here. I'm usually on stage, but we've had some technical issues defaulted mine, and we're working around them. Up in the screen there is a gentleman named Robert Huddleston, born down in Tennessee, and lived most of his life, younger life, formative stages, like Abe Lincoln, 7 or so to 20, in St. Joe, Missouri. He's only 101 as of June 4. So you look at him, he just finished his 7th book, and I have not got my first book done. So he's way ahead of most of us. The other guy in the bookstore wanted to know if he'd read 7 books. So I don't know if I got there yet or not. But anyway, this is Robert Huddleston, and we're going to get to him in just a minute, but we've got to tell you what's coming down the road. Tom David had a picture of a green car up there a little while ago. It's called the Salt Shark. And the Salt Shark will be here in 2 weeks on July 3rd, the day before 4th of July. The Salt Shark only goes 351 miles an hour. The man's bringing it from Louisville. You know why it's important military-wise is if you look at World War II, the B-29 that went to Japan and dropped the bomb, they practiced at Bonneville. There's a base next to there, Winterheimer, I think, or starts with a W, right next to there. It was closed in the 60s, but that's where they trained for the most significant event in the 20th century for the dropping of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, big boy and little boy. So next, on the 3rd, we hope you can come and you can sign up today so you don't have to sign up another time. And I'm glad all of you are here today. Any other announcements, people in the red shirts? Have I forgotten anything at this point? We have lots of things happening here. We'd like you to be a volunteer if you want to be, to wear one of these red shirts. I'll give it to you free if you show up. Now, this gentleman here, I know you can't see him very well, fault of only mine. You can see a little of him up there on the screen. Robert, you're not real big up there. Can't hear. Okay. I'm turning sideways. Let's see. Well, you got to turn in sideways. You can't turn sideways, can you, Robert? Okay, he can't turn sideways. Okay, we're turning back straight. Okay, but people in the back, you'll still be able to hear what he has to say. You might not be able to see him real well. You can move up the front if you want. But in the back, he's there. He was on a bigger screen. He was on the screen about 6 months ago, and we asked him most about his military things. And so we're going to get into some other questions today. I have a bunch of questions, but we're going to roll around the room, and you're going to walk up here and ask him some questions. Robert, we're going to start right now. And I want to ask the first thing is Nancy Sanderson may ask you a question about, can you hear me, Robert? Okay, Robert can hear us. So, Robert, what did he was very deprived. He lived in a little chair in the living room. They only had a one-bedroom apartment. His mom and dad lived in the bedroom, and he sat in the living room in some type of chair that wasn't a little more comfortable what you're in now for his formative years. And so he was
sort of deprived. His dad had to work everywhere. Remember, this is a recession. There was no jobs anywhere. And he worked in the car industry. The car industry fell apart. So, Robert, tell us, there were three things you said that was important to you in your formative years. What library did you go to? And tell us about your experiences in the library and how that helped you probably become the man you are. Go ahead. Can you hear that? Okay.
Although she was farmed out to a well-off relative, never talked much about it. Don't believe it was a very good experience. But anyway, there was a room for the two children in the St. Joseph, Missouri. So anyway, it was the middle of the 1930s, and of course I was student. Fortunately, we were about a half a dozen blocks away from Maine Public Library, and I made that my second home. The librarian was very pleasant. She had no problem with my finding a quiet corner and read what I wanted to read, not what people told me to read. But I think the fact of free reading was a main event in my learning process, which was the 1930s. As most of you will remember, Pearl Harbor brought us into the Second World War in 1939. I knew the military service was in the future, and like most young men my age, we dreamed of being pilots. That time, the head of the Air Force had decided we need 2 years of college, which of course was ridiculous. There weren't very many young men that had 2 years of college, so recruiting was very difficult. Anyway, a test was substituted for the 2 years of college, and that written library gave me what I needed to know to pass the test to qualify for training as a military pilot. It was one of the turning points of my life.
Okay, excellent. What Robert had told me is that he really didn't necessarily read about science or math. He read history, geography, and also mysteries. But that gave him the background to get a very good score on that test. That test was not easy, so Robert became a pilot because he tested out. So his IQ is, I asked him, I don't know what or your IQs are, but he said he's 126. So I think that's in the higher level. I don't know, I have all that IQ, but it's not low. So anyway, Robert, that was his experience. We missed the first part where he talked about his sister. His sister, 2.5 years older than him, born in 1921, she was farmed out to a rich relative, and she was a maid for them, but she didn't necessarily like that. They had no money, absolutely no money. So Robert, as you asked Nancy Sanderson, he has given us a lot to this museum to help with the education, and it's designed to help people of underprivileged nature. So Robert has been the keystone to that, and he's donated some funds for us the last 2 years to help with the education. And the education department has only taken care of 1,500 kids and adults in 23, 1,524, and this year there'll probably be 3,000 they take care of. They're not all underprivileged, but isn't that amazing? And this young lady here, Nancy Sanderson, she's right here, and she did visit Robert a week. She visited him a week or two ago. I'm sorry we don't see Robert, but that's my fault, nobody else's. We worked on it all week, and this is what we got because I was in charge. But anyway, the next thing, Robert, I want you to answer a couple more, or you're going to have a lot of questions because I'm going to walk around. These people are thinking of questions. So we have a picture up here, and somebody's going to walk that picture around, if I would, if you don't mind, so people can see it. But there's a picture here that Robert just gave us. This is two P-47s, and one of them is his, and one of them is his. He was a wingman, I believe, and this guy got hit by shrapnel over in Germany and went down. And this was an experience Robert was either Germany or Belgium. But Robert explained this picture. Somebody's going to walk the picture around. You know it well. One is on fire and the other one is not on fire. So we're walking around the place and they will see it. But you describe what happened to you and what you saw out of your wing on this about your friend there. Okay, Robert.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that there were two Air Forces, two separate Air Forces.
Louder. Can you hear it? Just a second.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
There were two Air Forces in Northern Europe in World War II. One was the strategic 8th Air Force and the fighters, many of them P-47s, escorted the bombers. But for the invasion of Europe, for the liberation of Europe, the 9th Air Force was formed, and they were equipped with the what I consider to be the best fighter bomber in World War II. Now the Germans were noted for putting into action the Stuka dive bomber, which was the dread of all Allied air forces, ground forces. He had the Stuka had the disadvantage of being unequal to take on Allied single-engine fighters. That was the advantage of the P-47. It could attack ground troops, and when needed, it could rise to the occasion and take on the German fighters, the famous ME-109 and the Focke-Wulf 190. It was a two-purpose fighter aircraft, no doubt, in my opinion, the best in World War II.
Okay, thank you. Now, tell us about this plane that we were walking the room around. This plane that you gave us your picture. Tell us exactly what happened there, Robert.
We were sent to go after an airfield that was constructed just off the German superhighway. In other words, it was in the forest, camouflaged, and then when it had to take off and landing, they would come out of the forest, get on the straight stretch of the German Autobahn and take off, do whatever they were sent to accomplish, attacking an airfield, escorting a medium bomber, whatever it was. They would carry out their mission, come back, land on the straight stretch of the Autobahn, and then disappear into the forest, camouflage, waiting for their next assignment. It worked well for the Germans. So we were carrying out one of these missions, and we attacked the airfield. supposedly hidden in the forest. And normally we always flew in pairs. And I was the wingman. We went in, we attacked the German airfield. And unfortunately for my element leader, Captain Francis, he was hit. He came out and got as close to, I was behind him, unhit, and we rose to about 10,000 feet at least, and he radioed me to fly in close and tell him where the smoke was coming from. As I did that, his plane burst into flame, and he came tumbling out and opened his parachute. I followed him down. Unfortunately, as we learned, he landed in the middle of an SS unit fighting off the Soviets. He had been badly burned and needed medical attention. And as an American Army colonel who had been captured, tried to get medical help, the Germans didn't respond, and as a result, Captain Francis died. Many years after that, I encountered a very good artist in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and I located him and asked if he could paint a P-47. He said, of course, you can paint one aircraft, you can paint any aircraft. Anyway, I wanted a painting of what would be the death of Captain Francis, and I described the situation, how he called me and asked that I tell him where the plane was burning. It was too late, and he should have bailed out as soon as he knew it was hit, but unfortunately he delayed and paid the ultimate price. I was able to locate the American criminal who had been captured earlier, and he confirmed how Francis had died. And I described that to the artist, and that painting resulted, which I think is an excellent item for the Air Museum. Visitors, I've been told, like to know the story behind a painting that was accurate of a real life and important event. I'm fortunate that this painting survived and will be displayed in the Arlington Military Museum. I'm quite proud of having it painted, and I think it's found a nice home for the future.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Another question? People are thinking questions right now. There's a jet called the 262. I believe it's a 262. The Germans made it in World War II. Did you ever encounter one of those jets? Now remember, our planes are going probably 300, 400 miles an hour, and a jet at that time about 550. Did you ever see one go by, and did you talk to any of your friends of how they would go catch those guys and shoot them down? Do you have any insight into that?
I did more than see one go by. I got on the tail of one who was attacking one of our medium bombers. He tried to get away and managed. I don't know how fast they could go, but by the time I got behind one of them, he decided to go full throttle, and off he went to live another day.
It was a tremendous invention by the Nazis to create that jet. That was ahead of our times, and the United States didn't have anything to meet that match. It's just we were lucky they didn't make enough of them. They didn't come out soon enough. Now, if you look at the Battle of the Rhine, you came in the war late, and the Battle of the Rhine, as we study it, March 23rd and 24th were the big days. That's the Rhine River. Caesar crossed it at, I think, 52 BC. And the next person to cross it was the Americans. So that's over 2,000 years between times. We're too close to 2,000. So Robert didn't see a lot of air traffic, but he was really important. Most of his missions, Lisa Kester here put all your missions together when we went to your house last time. But most of the missions over the Rhine River, there was a bridge that was left out of about 30 bridges. There's one or two left that they didn't collapse. You can't get to the other side. It's called the east side of the Rhine. We were located on the west side of the Rhine. And this was not too long after, March isn't too long after the Battle of the Bulge, which was December. And Eisenhower had to lick his wounds. We lost 75,000 troops at the Battle of the Bulge. And Eisenhower was really sad about losing all those warriors in the Battle of the Bulge. I lost my uncle, changed our family in December 1747. But anyway, his troops, Robert is over there working over the Rhine River, making a sortie every day or so. So if you just put the picture, we know all about the Battle of the Bulge, we know about the Battle of D-Day, but this battle was very important. It was getting over the German line. So what had happened is, down in the south, a guy named Patton, you heard of Patton, well, he wanted to get across the river, and he was going to beat Montgomery. And if you need to listen to the English version, then Montgomery beat him, but it was on the 23rd that Patton got across the river down south, and then Montgomery got across on the 24th. But who was protecting it was people like Robert, lots of air support. And we landed, we had about 4,500 planes, gliders, and support for planes at that time. The Germans had about 3,500 on the books, but they probably had about 300 to work it in that area, even less than that. So we outnumbered them probably 10 to 1. So Robert, tell us about your experience on the 23rd and 24th of March of 1945 when the Americans crossed the Rhine River.
Actually, the mission itself was what we call a piece of cake. There wasn't much action on our part. The Germans simply had limited forces to put into action. So I don't recall that they had the forces necessary to keep us from crossing the Rhine at that particular place. Later, I learned that a good close friend of mine, who was a first sergeant in an infantry parachute company, did cross the Rhine there, and did mention that he appreciated the support we were giving him. Ground troops are pretty much at the mercy of air attack. It takes air power to prevent the attacks on ground troops by enemy air. So if you lack that support, enemy ground forces were subject to whatever air power we applied in that particular section of the battle. And of course, we always had superior air forces than the Germans had. They had air power at the beginning of the conflict. We had superior air power at the end.
Okay, thank you. Now, Robert, I don't know if you saw Bailey Bridge, but we had to cross the Rhine in 1 day or 2 days. So the Rhine River, there were Bailey bridges that were made here at International Steel, and there's pictures of it in our in our home front gallery of the Bailey Bridges. Trockman Junkyard, or it's whatever, it's a steel yard. They have half their building made out of Bailey Bridges because there were leftovers here in Evansville. And you look at the inside of their place, it's all Bailey Bridges. Now, if we're going to have a bridge, it's called I-69. It'll get over to Henderson. It'll be done in 10 years. Maybe sooner than that, okay? So in 10 years, we'll have a very nice bridge. But the CBs and the people would make these bridges in 1 to 2 days. They'd take pontoons, big canoes, 20 men and carry them, and then clip together little parts of the bridge. And a tank could go over them and everything else. So Patton and the width of the Rhine River, if you study the width of the Rhine River, it's close to the size of Evansville. Evansville is 1.5 miles across the river. If you read about Bailey Bridges, they're good for 500 feet. Not, or, you know, or 1/3 crossing the river. Okay, not 1.5 miles. But in the Rhine River, they built real good stations and real strong supports in the middle of the river to hold these things so they wouldn't float away. The current was a problem. The current's about like the Ohio River, but they tore down most of the bridges. So tell us if you saw any of those bridges and what's your thoughts about the bridges and how they helped us in war, Robert?
We attacked the bridge, that was an assignment. In this case, it was the Germans, they were trying their best to destroy the bridges as they retreated. In other words, they used it, but they didn't want to leave them for the Allies to use in their pursuit. There was an interesting experience long after the war. I had a friend in Washington that told me he was with one of the companies that managed to cross the Rhine River Bridge before the Germans managed to destroy it. He said he got across and his sergeant came after him and found him he had found his way underneath the bed in one of the houses. And the sergeant said, "What the hell are you doing under there, Bill?" Anyway, that was a prime target of the Germans as they retreated in those closing weeks and months of the war.
So there was one bridge, there was, I think, 37 bridges, and all were gone during this attack. But there was one, the Germans had all kinds of bombs set on for it to blow up, and they did a bad job. So this bridge persisted for 12 days during our attack. It's up in the city, starts with an R, on the Rhine, in the northern Germany part. But the Americans, what's the name of it? Remagen. Remagen's the name of that bridge, or that city. And the Americans got across for about 12 days. Then the Germans got their planes and blew it up, but they didn't want that thing standing. So that helped us a lot. That's easier going over that bridge than making a Bailey Bridge. So the support on Bailey Bridge is just absolutely amazing. But anyway, thank you for that, Robert. Now, after May 6, 1945, you were assigned to do some things in mainland Germany. This was after we won the war. You were assigned, I think, to go find some engine that was lost over there. Tell me what you did find.
The war ended on May 8, 1945. We had actually been grounded about 3 or 4 days earlier because of the fear that we would misidentify and attack the Soviet aircraft. We didn't want to start World War III with a new enemy. Anyway, I do recall that the last great battle on the front was at Prague, Czechoslovakia, and there was a German SS troop trying to hold off Soviet forces, and we were assigned to the area to prevent the Germans from bringing up SS reinforcements. The fact was, they didn't have any reinforcements, and we were actually there to prevent the SS troops from successfully retreating from the Soviet forces. They knew if they were captured, they would probably be summarily executed. That was the fate of SS troops from the Soviets. So we were there not to prevent the SS from bringing up reinforcements because they didn't have any. We were there to prevent them from escaping from the advancing Soviet forces, who were assisted by troops that survived the attack on Czechoslovakia. In other words, we were there to prevent the getaway of the Soviet forces. I think we did a good job. I do recall my personal destruction of a vehicle that had come out of the Battle of the Bulge. And we were told by a captive SS officer that vehicle contained the general in charge of the SS forces, General Kammerer. That would have been a major success had we been in the vehicle, because I destroyed it. And he was one of the prime criminals that would have been prosecuted as a war criminal if he had survived Soviet forces that might have captured. Anyway, I did destroy a vehicle trying to get away, trying to escape Soviet forces. And it's a very good possibility that that vehicle contained General Kammerer, who we knew had been later reported to his wife as having been trying to escape Soviet forces, but was destroyed by a P-47 attacking fighter bomber.
Okay, Robert, that experience you just talked about, I want the crowd to know our crown jewel here is a thing called the P-47, called Hoosier Spirit II, made in 1944. Didn't see a lot of action, but as you pulled the bullets, I assume you strafed this car, or you could have dropped a bomb on the car, you could have shot a missile at the car. Tell us what you did and what the plane felt like, and how high were you above this car when you hit it, and how long did you pull the trigger?
You could have your P-47, 850 calibers, set to converge at a set distance. For close ground support, destroying enemy vehicles, we had the 850 set to converge about 200 yards, which was pretty close, coming in at a speed of about 350 miles per hour. At least that's what I recall. My aircraft was set when I destroyed this white vehicle trying to get away from Soviet forces. So I think it had a very important SS officer in there.
200 yards, aiming point's about a mile.
Confirmed that I had achieved a real definite kill of a ranking Nazi.
Okay, what did the plane feel like when you pulled the bullets?
There was a slight feeling of slowing down in microseconds. In other words, we fired the A-50s all at the same time. So, and we had them set to converge pretty close to the target. And in this case, I just blew this vehicle apart. No doubt I killed whoever was in it. And it had to be a high-level Nazi trying to escape the Soviets.
So on this, when you were shooting this plane or shooting this car, that's a pretty good aim. Tell us how you learned how to aim. And there is a sight, using of a sight on a P-47. Can you tell us about that and how in the heck you could hit that? I couldn't hit that if you tried 100 years. And how well were you trained and how they train you to hit a spot in the road like that?
It was a matter of judgment. A fighter bomber dropping bombs was like, I describe it as you would deliver a softball. You threw the bomb at the target. So it was a matter of judgment. And in the training, I claim I got pretty good at it, but you had to know when to release that bomb that you were throwing at the target. And it was pretty darn effective. We didn't have bomb sights. We had good training.
Now, did you ever drop any bombs?
Oh, I dropped lots of bombs.
Tell us what it felt like and tell us how accurate you were and how many pound bombs you had and how you released the bombs.
The P-47 was assigned first to bomber escort duty as part of the 8th Air Force. It used so much fuel, the escort duty didn't protect the bombers very far into Germany as they were recovering from a bombing mission. We added external fuel tanks, and that helped. But the use of fuel limited the escort duty. As happens in warfare, much of the assets developed were developed with what we believed would be their duty. And in the case of the P-47, it was designed as an interceptor. In other words, it would protect an Allied air base from enemy aircraft, but it didn't work very well because it had a slow climbing ability. So unless it was in the air, high above the Allied air base, it could not do much in the way of protection. It could dive at a phenomenal speed because of its 7-ton weight. It was very, very slow in rising to do battle. Anyway, I recall not doing much in the way of escort. Air battles were fought by the 2 enemy aircraft forces coming into combat. The first escort aircraft were the P-47s and had limited success. However, they became so adept at escort duty, they destroyed more enemy aircraft in air combat than the P-51 that was the darling of journalists. The P-51 was a beautiful aircraft, but it could not match the performance of the P-47 and the 56 Fighter Group, who destroyed more enemy aircraft than the P-51.
Okay, excellent. A couple comments on that. What he was talking about, from going to London to Germany, these bombers had enough gas to get there, but the P-47 could get halfway, and then they had to go back. So the Germans knew that, and they just went right after those bombers like piranhas when we had to be based out of London. Now, once we got land in France after 44, D-Day, and in Belgium, then like Robert, he didn't have as long distance to go. That tank has about 270 gallons at 5 gallons a minute full force. You maybe got an hour or 2 hours of gas. You got to come back because it's a gas guzzler. So that's what he was talking about. You just ran out of gas too soon. They put extra tanks on it. But if you look at why we took over Iwo Jima, we thought we were going to run into the same problem against the Japanese, but the Japanese Air Corps was about destroyed, and we didn't run into much problem when we were over Japan bombing them. So what happened in Europe was different than what happened in Japan. Japan had such a bad attrition, they hardly had any planes left. In Germany, during Bob's time, he didn't see a lot of German planes because they were all gone just about. He had kids, probably 18 years of age, with probably 30 hours, 60 hours of training flying. And they had run out of people, they run out of machines, they run out of everything. Now, Bob, tell us about those ladies you saw over in Germany after VE Day. What were they doing in that little place? You were supposed to be hunting for bombs and you found these women. What were they doing?
We were, as I say, grounded. And when the war ended, they asked for volunteers. Now, the heads of the Allied governments agreed to zones of occupation. Now, a lot of people don't know what the end of the war provided complete disarmament of the German military forces. And that meant there were a lot of grounded German assets within the zones, the 4 zones of occupation, with the Soviets, the US, the French, and the English. Now, before those countries took possession of their zone, which was originally set right after the defeat of the Germans, each country tried to get the best of the German assets before they turned over what area they had captured that was within another country's zone of occupation. Each of the 4 countries agreed not to take any valuable German assets out of the zone that they occupied that wasn't handed to them after the war. They lied. Each country tried to get as many of the valuable German assets as they could. It was in their self-interest to take assets away, not only from the Germans and the Soviets, but from the English. We all operated in our self-interest. I volunteered to join teams that would go into the future Soviet zone and identify what would be our best interest to take out of there before the Soviets and the English and the French occupied what area we might have captured and had access to the best of the German equipment. Again, it's in our self-interest not to let, for us not to take what might go to the French or the English as well as the Soviets. Self-interest governed when it came to taking over valuable German military assets.
And you missed, I asked the question, I don't know how you know all that stuff. I don't think many in the room know what you just said, but where you get that brain? Let me have a little bit of that. Anyway, my God, they didn't teach me that in history class. All right, now the question was, you went over to do that, and you run for an engine, and then you found these women. What were they doing?
What I would do, when I volunteered for what we call disarmament of the Germans, I was assigned a jeep with a driver, a sergeant with a machine gun, and a Dutch interpreter. And I would scout the area, and I would go into the headquarters of an American occupied forces and ask them if they could remember any German manufacturing facilities that I could go evaluate and report back on, so we could notify Transportation Corps to provide trucks to take away the captured German equipment that we wanted. And one unit described a village they had come through, and yes, there was some kind of manufacturing plant there, and they were using women. They described where the village was, and they sent my unit in hot pursuit. I found the village, and I found the women manufacturing. Even after the war was over, German equipment, they were still manufacturing swastika flags. And when I described this to a more learned officer, he said, of course they were. What the hell would you be doing if everything around you was collapsing and you didn't know what kind of future was in store? You'd continue doing exactly what you were doing when the conflict ended. Brilliant assessment.
Okay, Robert, I have one other question, and then I'm going to bring people from the crowd up, and they're going to have to get in this little circle. Mr. Davis got me in a circle here that I can't get out of, or I messed the microphone up. Hopefully you can hear in the back. Can you still hear in the back? All right.
Yes.
They're hearing in the back. So you got an audience, and there's only one person sleeping. It's Eldon. Okay. So he went to sleep, but everybody else looks like they're awake. So there's about 173 people here, so you went to put one to sleep is all. Oh, he woke up. Eldon, thank you. All right, now, the question is, and Mr. Tom David could ask this question a lot better, but Tom David knows this so well, I can't let him do it because he'll drill down so much. This man named Von Braun, you can't go too long now, Robert, just go about 4 minutes on him, okay? Von Braun, tell us what he's important for, and tell us, did you see anything he made or any of his elements over there in Germany, and then tell him what you knew about him in the United States. Tom David's going to give us a talk on this for about an hour down in the fall this year. He's the man in charge of the microphones over here in the video, and I think they're ready to shoot me. Okay, Robert, you got 4 minutes. What's the question? I want the question. Tell me about Von Braun in 4 minutes.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay, the question. Tell me what your experience was with Von Braun.
Oh, yes. My unit, the 404th Fighter Group, at the end of the war, was just very close to the underground factory that produced the P-2 ballistic rocket. Now, a very informed historian told me that rocket had no effect on the war. It couldn't hit a target, but it resulted in the death, the terrible death of about 20,000 slave laborers under the jurisdiction of Werner von Braun. He was a war criminal. In my experience, there is absolutely no doubt of that. The way they treated slave labor in producing a rocket that had little impact on the war. In other words, it was a luxury that von Braun had and he never paid for. He was a war criminal. There's no doubt about that, because the slave labor that he used in his underground factory, most of them, well, to dig the tunnel where the bombs were manufactured, he used and misused Jewish slave labor. They dug the tunnel. But when the tunnel was ready for manufacturing the ballistic rocket, he used mainly slave labor brought from France and other occupied countries because he needed skilled labor. And those skilled labor, many, well, I'll use the figure that the military used. They said about 20,000 slave labor died producing von Braun's brilliant rocket that had little.
Hello, you're leaving. Your connection's unstable. Okay. Call me back here, Steve. Okay, come up here and ask questions, and I'll get this back. I'll get you back. Okay, you don't have any questions? Everybody can ask questions, but he can't ask one. He's gonna ask too deep a question. Come on up here, Brian. His question will be so people won't know what to do. Yeah, wait, we'll get you this microphone. Let me get him on, okay? Just a second, yet. We're not here yet. And anybody else can come up here. You turn to the crowd and do the camera.
I would like to make a comment, and this is not to be argumentative with Mr. Huddleston. He's obviously a very, very well-talented individual and has written a lot about the history of World War II and his involvement. I would like to share this one comment real quickly, and we're going to dive into this subject of von Braun because it's very controversial of what he did and what he did when he came to the United States. But I'd like to share this one quick thought. The factory he's talking about is Middlework. The Germans did indeed hire slave labor to build the rocket. They first started building it at Peenemünde. And von Braun and his co-partner in this was directing that involvement at Peenemünde. But there's a gentleman named Himmler Heimler that got involved. Everybody know who he is with the SS. He decided, once they bombed Peenemünde and moved that factory, he took over the involvement of the slave labor. And that's when it went downhill. And von Braun tried his best to step back because he saw the atrocities. Unfortunately, he did not speak out, or he tried. He ended up in jail for 2 weeks. A lot of people don't know that story. But we're going to talk about that in an upcoming presentation.
All right, Robert, we got you on. Here's a question for you. Robert, answer the phone. There we go. Here we go. Here's a question. You ready?
Okay, Mr. Huddleston, what was your first?
What? You can interpret it for him, you can't hear. Here it is, come in.
What was your first reaction when you ran into flak over Germany? Did it really upset you a lot, or did you pretty well maintain your cool?
Okay, did you hear that question?
I'm a very young and innocent person. You know, I was never afraid in combat. I wasn't smart enough to realize that the Germans were trying to kill me. It's not called bravery, it's called stupidity.
So did the flak bother you, is what the question was, the flak that's shooting up at you, did you ever, did your partner there that, in this picture, did he get the flak, or did you ever know anybody that the flak got him, and were you ever hit by flak? Alan Sanderson got flak, and he had to ride the circle back to Italy, yeah, and he got out of it, but he had about 6-8 inches hole in his wing. Did you ever have any problems with flak?
Actually, I didn't. I was very fortunate. There was a lot of it. I remember that the 9th Air Force was created to provide air support for the Normandy and the liberation of Europe from the Germans. It depended on your luck. There's no other way to say it. Their gunners weren't any better than ours. They did have the best anti-aircraft weapon in the 88 cannon, but their actual talents weren't any greater than our anti-aircraft. So it was luck. They put up enough flak, even late in the war, to where if you had flak damage, you were unlucky. That's about all I can say about it. And I was lucky. I was very lucky.
You brought up something about anti-air.
There is a wonderful photograph of my flight leader that took an 88, we think it was maybe it was a 20 millimeter. He took a shot from the rear that went through dead center on one of the blades of his P-47. It's a classic photograph. It's about 1,000,000,001 chance. It's a shot that came from behind and went dead center through a blade going at about 1,500 revolutions per minute. Anyway, luck has brought you safely home after the war.
Okay,
End of speech.
Yeah, one last question. You talked about anti-aircraft. You told me a story about one of the Germans after the war came and landed at the airport you were stationed in, and tell how accurate your anti-aircraft machinery is.
Yeah, on the 1st of January 1945, the Germans put up about 1,000 aircraft that between where they were and in other words, it was the last blow from the German Luftwaffe, and they pursued up 1,000 aircraft, and because they were quite a few of them were shot down by their own anti-aircraft crews. They weren't used to seeing German aircraft. Anyway, it was a big day, and one of the Germans, a single engine FW-190, actually landed unhit on our airfield in Belgium. And our commanding officer, our squadron commander, who was a great pilot, wanted to fly that aircraft that had been unscathed, but the headquarters wouldn't let it, even after he painted over the swastika. Anyway, the German managed to land. And as he was climbing out of the cockpit, American soldiers, quite a few of them, were rushing to get him. And he thought he was about to be lynched. But what they were rushing to do, the first one that got from the Germans contained his Luger sidearm, which was a coveted bit of German equipment to liberate.
But you also had anti-aircraft shooting at him and it didn't hit him coming in. I thought you said that. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't understand.
I thought you said there was some anti-aircraft machinery that was shooting at him as it came and landed, and they never shot him, never hit him.
Yeah, that did not speak well of our anti-aircraft.
Okay, Robert, I don't have any other questions here.
Nothing was hit. In fact, when we left Belgium, that aircraft, and German SW-190 was still on the base. And then all American, all Allied pilots were denied the ability to fly. Although, once you can fly an aircraft, you can fly an enemy aircraft. All you need is a cockpit check to know what translate each control.
That was an F-109. That's called the Fokker. That's the only German model.
It was FW-190.
Okay, was that the Fokker? Is that the Fokker? That's Fokker. That's the only one that was water cooled at the German fighters. Or air cooled. Ours is air cooled. Most fighters, most of them are all air cooled. That German one was a water or air cooled one, which made it a lot more resistant to tough times. I have a gentleman here that you just signed your book for him. His name's Bruce Green. He's gone to 3 different Holocaust things, and he flew there with you and me, or Bruce and Nancy Sanders and I flew there, and then we tried to fly back. We got halfway. Anyway, here's Bruce.
Hi, Mr. Huddleston. You talked about the bombs and the 50 caliber machine guns. Can you tell us about any experiences you had firing the rockets from the wings of the P-47?
My squadron did not have any aircraft capable of firing rockets. There were 3 squadrons, and as I recall, I was in the 106. I think I'm getting my notifications screwed up anyway. We had to borrow aircraft to fire rockets. They weren't much good anyway. We had to have solid fuel rockets, and they weren't accurate. Solid fuel had a tendency not to burn evenly, so you would fire a rocket, it would take off on a straight line to the target. But before it got there, it would hit some solid fuel to send it off course. Solid fuel rockets were not accurate. And as I say, my squadron, I didn't have them anyway. And so we borrowed, they wanted every pilot to have some experience firing rockets. So we would borrow aircraft from the 508 and get some experience, because when it was perfected later on, it was a great weapon. But when we moved through World War II, they were not accurate.
So when you look at our plane, we do not have the rockets on there. On each wing, you could have 3 rockets on each wing. And a lot of pictures we have are like that. It's the Warthog is the most advanced, one of the most advanced planes we have. They have rockets, they have bullets, and they have bombs. And so they're the most advanced.
You can't,
P-47.
You could not have both rockets and bombs. You had to select one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
We use the same attachment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, we're going over time. Robert, we had you back on stage and partly on stage, but we had your audio. And on behalf of the Evans Wartime Museum, we thank you for all that you help with the teaching committees. And here's the crowd clapping. You can hear them. They're all clapping. And you what? 101. Well, I tell you, I think your brain's probably better than most of us here. So we can transport you here. We tried to get him to come here, but he won't fly. You know, he used to fly, but he wouldn't fly here, so we had to do it this way. But you guys have just listed somebody that's probably the smartest guy on P-47s that's alive today, and we think there's only 3 people alive. He's one. We got one down Florida, a friend of his that's 103 in there. Bruce found somebody in Pittsburgh we're going to see. So there's only 3 probably pilots alive, but most of them couldn't talk like he talked. He worked at NASA for probably 30 years, and this guy, you just heard the talk from the talk, okay? So thank you for listening. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Eva.
Each one is done because that's their, I'm truly immortal.
Thank you, and we got to buy some of your books. We got to get some of those and sell them. You're one of the best authors around. Thank you. Bye, Eva. Thank you very much.